Everybody, Questwise here, and today I want to talk about something. The other day I was watching YouTube, which I do a lot, and I was watching a channel called Your Humble Game Master, and it's Lee Rimmer on his channel talking about how he believes that the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game is actually the best, in his opinion, the best way to introduce people to role-playing. And I'll put a link down below to his video as well too, so you can check that out. It's not super long, but it makes some very compelling points, and it got me thinking about this game and why I love this game as much as I do. Now, I'm not as at least on the channel, haven't been quite as fanatical as I have been about some other games. But I think that's because my interest in this game, my love of Call of Cthulhu, is a little bit more personal. It's a little bit more deep-seated than some of my sort of fandom for other games. And I'll tell you why. And why I agree with Your Humble Game Master and his channel there and his video about being... But I think it's more than just introducing people to role-playing. This game is extremely well written. It is one of the games that when I first purchased it, and especially this edition, the newest edition, that reading through it, there was not a lot of sort of flipping back and forth, trying to understand concepts. It's written in such a great way that you instantly, or at least for me, I was instantly aware of how the game works, how it flows, how everything works together to create the sort of horror role-playing experience. The thing for me, and I think this is the reason why I like this game so much, I'm a huge history dork. I love history. I studied history in college. I studied ancient languages. And so for me, this really tickles a lot of those things. What's really great about this is while the default settings in the core book are 1920s, which is the same sort of time period in which the original Lovecraft stories were written, in modern day, this game is flexible enough that it can be played in any time period. In fact, I'll have a review of the Cthulhu Dark Ages, the newest one. It's not even out in hardcover yet. I purchased the PDF, which will also give me a credit towards buying the hardcover when it's available. But I'll be doing a review of that very soon and showing you how the sort of breadth of this game kind of covers any time period, from ancient times all the way up into the future as well too. But so it's written in such a great way that yes, it's very easy to introduce players to that. You can also use the starter kit as well. I don't have it right here in front of me. It's over here on a shelf, which is an amazing thing. I did an unboxing video for that. If you want to go back and check that out, I walked through and showed you everything that was in the box set and how I was very pleased with the contents of the box, the production of the box, as well as the price of that box was amazing. So it's really easy to get into the game, and it gives you enough stuff to be able to play in the Call of Cthulhu universe. The other thing I really appreciate about this is you don't, and I think Lee references this too. It's sometimes better if you go into this game not knowing about the Cthulhu mythos, because it gives you that much more excitement, that much more discovery, that much more exploration. A sense of awe and wonder and horror, if you don't know much about that kind of stuff. As a game master, you'll learn everything you need to know here, and it will drive you to go read, some of the Cthulhu tales. It will drive you to seek out some of this stuff and read up on some of the original stories that sort of spawned this game. But the game is much more than that as well too. I've run this game without using the Cthulhu mythos whatsoever. You can make this a purely investigative game. Now, it can still be a horror game. Something you might not know about me is that I love the concept of ghosts and ghost hunting. And I don't mean by like, psychic mediums and some of these more sort of over-the-top TV shows that really try to sensationalize the sort of whole haunting aspect of things. I'm more of a fan of that sort of original Ghost Hunters or Ghost Nation type thing, where they go into a situation trying to debunk a situation, and I really love the concept. And I've had a few strange experiences in my life, so I don't ever discredit. I'm very open minded to all that kind of stuff, and more than just ghosts. All I'm very open minded to a lot of different things, but um, you could run a completely sort of ghost investigative type game with Call of Cthulhu without having any of the Cthulhu mythos, not having any of that involved. You could run a simple, Jack the Ripper murder mystery set in the 1920s, 1800s, whatever time period you want, running using just these rules. And the flexibility of that is what's really, really exciting to me. The other thing that's really exciting to me is that you play a normal person, and sometimes that's very refreshing. When you're playing a role-playing game, sometimes you want to be a superhero. Sometimes you want to be an over-the-top fantasy character, epic fantasy, high fantasy kind of character. Sometimes you want to be a space marine in the front lines of some intergalactic war against bug-type aliens. And that's great. For a lot of people love that kind of stuff. It's an escapism from their real life. One of the things that I enjoy about Call of Cthulhu, though, is sometimes you just want to play. You want to still escape, but sometimes you just want to play a normal human being. Now, this game tends to be a little bit more on the heavier emotional side. It's definitely meant to be a little bit more serious, though you can play it as campy as you want. It's flexible enough to do those kinds of things as well too. But it's meant to be sort of on an emotional level of you're investigating these dark things. And sometimes that's sanity shattering. You don't have to encounter mythos creatures in order to go insane. There are horrible enough things to witness that can affect that as well too. But you can run just about anything, and you're playing a normal human being. You're playing a person who has normal skills, and sometimes that's fun to do, to sort of emulate things like a police procedural type of an event, or an Indiana Jones type of character where you're exploring ancient archaeological dig sites, and you come across a mummy or some undead or something. There's still fantastical elements to it, but your character is very grounded in being human and the things that humans can overcome and experience. Of course, myself, one of my favorite characters that I've ever run in Call of Cthulhu was a history professor, because that's me. It's kind of one of those things as well too, that I've always wanted to kind of pursue. But the flexibility is great. The other thing that I really enjoy about this game, and I want to show you something very, very special, is that the inspiration for games can come from anywhere. It can come from movies. It can come from comics. It can come from books. It can come from a lot of inspiration for some of the adventures come from the original Lovecraft stories. But the idea of mysteries and conspiracies and the unexplained are what really drives me to explore Call of Cthulhu in all its different facets. The thing I want to share with you is last year for, I believe it was Christmas. It may have been my birthday. I can't remember. My wife got me, I'm a collector of books, especially rare, hard to find old books. I love old books. And my wife usually surprises me with some great stuff. She surprised me a couple of years ago with some original editions of Tarzan, the first 3 volumes. Really cool stuff. Last year she surprised me with a couple books. One of them was For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. And this, From Sea to Sea by Rudyard Kipling. But she could only find volume 2. Which was fine. It's still a great book. It is dated for 1899. It's still in really nice shape. The binding's a little weak, but very, very cool. Now, I didn't know, I mean, I know Rudyard Kipling, right? The Jungle Book, we're all familiar with that. But I didn't know anything about this. And this is actually sort of it's a travel log of him traveling from the U.S. across the world into Asia and back and stuff. And it was a 2-volume set. And some of it's a little sensationalized. It's Rudyard Kipling. He was a writer. But what's really fascinating about this book, because the book itself kind of dry. I haven't read the whole thing, but reading through it, there's some really cool parts, and then there's some that are just really kind of rather boring. But because it's Rudyard Kipling and his way to sensationalize things, the chapter titles are very, very, they make it sound very, very interesting. The Great Census, the Gathering of Gods. There's a lot of cool stuff, and a lot of times when you go to those chapters, it's his tales, his travel logs. But what made this really interesting to me, and the reason why I'm eventually going to incorporate this into a Call of Cthulhu adventure, maybe mini campaign, which I would love to eventually. I've got a bunch of notes taken down, but eventually I want to get it into some kind of written format. As I was flipping through this, I came to the very back page, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on camera, but there was a handwritten note in pencil on the very last page. The very last page. And this is what it says. J.D. Rockefeller, address is number 4, 54th Street, New York. The name rang a bell, right? John D. Rockefeller. So I Googled it. And sure enough, John Rockefeller's address was number 4, 54th Street in New York. What? Why? Why would this random book that my wife picked up, I don't know if she got them from the internet, if she got it from a local antique dealer or what. And no one, I don't know if anybody realized this or noticed it. Volume 2, Rudyard Kipling's travel logs, has John D. Rockefeller, right? Rockefeller Center, basically the father of New York City. His address written on the very last page of this book. That instantly got me thinking of Call of Cthulhu. What kind of weird, crazy mystery? So I began to do research. I began to dig up articles online and different newspaper things. Rudyard Kipling and John Rockefeller were still alive about the same time. But there's no indication that they ever knew each other. I also learned that while the address in the back of this book was the public record of John Rockefeller living in New York City, he also had a secret apartment in that same building, 54th Street, that no one knew about until like decades later. In fact, it was like maybe 2012 before someone realized that there was a secret apartment fully furnished that was also owned by John Rockefeller. Instant adventure ideas, instant campaign ideas came to my mind. Why was someone trying to give this book? That's my thought anyway. Why was someone trying to give Rudyard Kipling's travel logs to John Rockefeller? Why would their address be in here? Why would it be on the last page, handwritten? 2, there's no evidence that they knew each other, but maybe they did. Is there something in this book that maybe someone thought John Rockefeller should know about? That maybe there's something of interest to John Rockefeller? The other thing is, why did John Rockefeller have a secret apartment? Was it to avoid the public eye? Or was he hiding something? Or was he doing some kind of thing? Was he maybe importing stuff from across the world? Hard to tell. I mean, there's dozens of little plot threads running throughout the thing. So that's just one of the cool things about Call of Cthulhu, is that inspiration can come from anywhere. And like I said, because of the flexibility of being able to go back to ancient times and doing stuff, and drawing all the way up to the future, modern day and the future and stuff, that's what makes this game really, really unique and really, really cool. And so I completely agree with Your Humble Game Master and Lee Rimmer over on his channel there. Not only is this a great starter game, but this is a game that will birth ideas for games and adventures and campaigns forever. I mean, the possibilities of this game are completely endless. So if you haven't checked this out before, please do. And if you have checked it out and you're a fan as well, let me know about some of the adventures that you've written, some of the ideas that you've come up with that have been inspired by either, Lovecraft stories or by crazy, weird mysteries like this. And I'll go into more detail about this kind of stuff. I'm also going to do a review about the Dark Ages, Cthulhu Dark Ages and stuff in the future. But love to hear from you and hear the crazy stories that you've told with Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game. And if you haven't checked it out, please do. I highly recommend grabbing the starter set. A great deal. It's $25, and you get all the stuff that you could ever want and more in there as well too. So until next time, my friends, I'm Questwise. Stay safe and game on.